Good evening, everybody. I can't see anybody. I hope there's people there. Yehuda Stern, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Good.
Do you keep up with your uncle ever? Zoran Morbid?
No. I saw him last year when I was in Eretz. We went there. When I lived in Eretz, we ate with them a few times.
How's your son, by the way?
Baruch Hashem, he's doing well.
It's nice. We don't see each other anymore.
I know.
No. It's. What are you saying there?
How did you know? How did you know David?
I don't. My brothers-in-law know him quite well. I knew one's called Naftali Walensky. They would always tell me stories about him. Very lot of stories about him, and especially by your auntie.
Yeah.
She's a
I remember hearing Naftali was with him.
Yeah, Naftali Walensky, and who was the other one who talked to me about your uncle? What was his name? By my head. Goodness. Can't remember. But
One of the Poland,
it's very special things by your auntie as well. She does dozens of different jobs and never goes to bed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How's everybody? Is everybody okay?
Baruch Hashem, and you?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Yeah.
Did it upload?
Yes, it did. Yes, I don't know what took it. It took me like 3 hours to upload. I'm not sure why it took so long.
Well,
the internet
other
connection
people must have been using it. So,
do you think other people?
Yehuda, did you give a secret Shiur in Beis Yisrael this morning? I saw you walking in that direction.
Me? Yeah, I went into Beis Yisrael this morning. The sofa was there.
Yes.
Before me. How do you know the sofa was there? You know, he said to me.
I saw you.
What? It says on the shul notice. Yehuda, are you listening?
No, I saw you going in that direction, so I thought.
Vayakil Pekudei. No, because it was in the basin there. Vayakil Pekudei, it says in the shul. Mashvaruach, Saint Hanamot Levocha, and wash your hands because of the coronavirus.
Wow.
20 seconds, I think it says. Remember those days? You know, what did
signs are still up.
The signs are still up.
Yeah, I was there the other day. Yeah. Did you get Shabbos 3?
Yeah, I got Shabbos 3.
Whilst you were there?
Yeah.
You took it?
Yeah, I took it.
Saved me a job.
Yeah, thanks. The base is...
Yehuda's been there dusting off all our standards.
Except yours, Shua.
It's mamish. It's
mine. I took it home, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, we don't know what Cheshbon Shemaim are.
Someone can go and tidy up if they want. Needs a tidy
yeah,
up.
there's like 100 or 200 bottles of Coke there if anybody gets really thirsty.
No, that's because we had to empty that cupboard because we had to get the old Misaskim chairs which we use in Shul Tisha B'Av. Had to get them out because we needed them Matzah Pesach.
Wow, well, that's depressing.
Yeah, that's why all the Coke is out. So we ran in there Matzah Pesach straight at night, and emptied that whole cupboard.
Wow.
But that's Shua's job anyway.
Yeah. No,
sure. Where's the Coke?
Moshe, you're welcome to go to shul and take whatever you want. There's 100 bottles there. It's not going to last at this rate. It's not going to be good when we get back to shul, I can assure you.
Should be all right. It's not in a hot cupboard. We're all right.
It's very strange, very eerie feeling to go in there. And again, Basin can't do gittin anymore, you realize. I used to sometimes sit on the get as a down of a gittin, and now they can't do gittin anymore.
That's good.
Yeah, you can think it's good, but I suppose there's something happening, I don't know. Anyway. Okay, let's get back to the more hand. We are up to Daf Ein Daled Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the bottom. The truth of the matter is, these next few daf have within them a huge wealth of information. It's impossible to do them all. And especially because a lot of it's not literally in the page. It's like what we learn out of the page, if you know what I mean. But it's literally a huge topics. So we're up to Daled 3 lines to the bottom. Chizki Omar. Aboyer Tumasim. Tumasim is a kind of being, which the Gemara Beta tells us, they only become edible after you cook them 7 times. I don't know which. It's kind of being mitoich b'selis shlein. If you take them out of the shells and everything else, chayav, you're chayav, which is very difficult because some chizki oich mitoich b'selis also. Does the whole taking good out of the bad is also? That can't possibly be. Normally we pass can bad out of the good is no good, but good out of the bad is okay. There's a famous way to remember it. Ayon, Aleph, Yud, Lamed. Aleph stands for Oichel, Yud stands for Yad, and Lamed says Le'alta, immediately. Ayon, and you have to do it, Ayon, you have to do it like a ram. So how could it be? Answers the Gemara, Shani Tulmasin, top of Ein Daladon base, to Shol Kilei Shiva Zimni, that you have to cook it 7 times, Vilei Shol Kilei Nisach, and if you don't cook it 7 times, it goes bad. Rashi gives a couple of explanations, but the one which Rashi likes the best. When you take beans, which have been cooked only once or twice out of other beans, those beans are no good because they haven't been cooked 7 times. So it's essentially taking beans that have only been cooked once or twice out of other beans. You're now taking the bad out of the good because the other beans are going to eventually be cooked 7 times and they'll be tasty. But these beans are not. So therefore, it's no good. We're up to the next malach, which is to grind. Omar Papa. Haiman de poem silka. The person who chops up beets. Chai, mishum teichen. It's chai because of teichen. And over here, there's a very, very short tesis. I always used to have a Rebbe who used to say to me, the shorter tesis or the shorter Rashis, those are the ones that are more difficult. And I'm sure that you'd agree with this tesis is a difficult one. Look at this tesis, top tesis. Haiman de poem silka. Dafke besilka shai tchina. Only with beets, there's such thing as teichen. But other foods it's permitted. What in the world does tesis mean? What does he mean, only beets? Only beets? What about carrots? What about potatoes? And why only beets? So regarding this, there's a huge machlokes. Some say beets is a food that cannot be eaten raw, can only be eaten cooked. Therefore, grinding it is preparing it to be eaten. And therefore it's a problem of teichen. The foods that are cooked, eaten, foods that can be eaten raw, let's say cucumbers, then there's no problem of teichen. And according to this, is a big kula from tesis that you're allowed to grind cucumbers and things like that, only foods that can't be eaten raw. Others say tesis means beets, because beets, it's normal, it's the fashion to cut them into small pieces. But other things not. So there's a big shaila, how far does teichen go? There's important halacha, for example. Let's say you're chopping up a salad. How small can you chop up a salad, right? If let's say your wife Shabbos morning wants to make a cucumber tomato salad, do you have to tell her not to cut up the cucumbers to 2 small pieces, or does it not matter? However small they are, it's okay. This is a very big machlokes. Generally speaking, cucumber salad is not such a problem. A bigger problem is when people start grating carrot salad. That could be a real problem of teichen. Omar Menashe, Haiman de solis silti, a person who cuts tiny pieces of wood, chai mishum teichen. It's also teichen. You're cutting wood into small pieces. Omar Rashi, kapuda mishchosa. If you care about the size, chai mishum mechatech, you chai because of mechatech. So whenever you cut something to a specific size, there's a issa derais on mechatech. Mufak quotes this many times. For example, let's say opening a packet of crisps, which is a big shayla if you're allowed to, how you're allowed to. If someone would say to you, is there issa mechatech on opening a packet of crisps, what would you say to him? Opening a packet of crisps, is there a problem on mechatech?
No, it's meant to be opened.
You may be right, maybe wrong. That's not what the Gemara over here says.
No, mechatech is aimed at something hard.
No, also, you're right, but you're not seeing what the Gemara over here says. The Gemara over here says only if you care about the size. When you open the packet of crisps, you don't care if it's half open, whole open, a third open. Mechatech is only when you care about the size. If you cut a piece of leather to size, that's mechatech. If you tear the thing in half and you don't care what size it is, that might be korea, but mechatech it isn't. You must remember this halacha. Mechatech is when you care about which size it comes to be. Va'alosh, some do needs, va'oifa, some do base. Omar Papa Shavak Tana Didam, Bishul Samonim Dava B'Mishka, V'nokat Oifa. Why does the Tanava Mishnah reject talking about spices? which is the normal cooking in the Mishkan, because they used to heat up the dyes in order to be able to color the wall whichever color they wanted. And the Mishnah says oifa. Really, oifa and mevashel is the same thing. Oifa is baking, mevashel is cooking. Now, in the Mishkan, when they would prepare the dyes, they would do cooking. And the Mishnah talks about baking. Why does the Mishnah talk about baking, not cooking? Answers the Gemara. The Tana Didon, Sidur de Pas Nokat. Our Tana wanted to go the order of bread. And the Ran says that bread is much more common than cooking. People bake bread all the time. So that, because the bread is the main thing of life. So therefore, since baking is more common than cooking, so therefore the Tana decided to talk about baking, not cooking, because baking is much more frequent. A person who throws a peg into a fire is chayav because of mavasha. Think of pshita, of course. That he's trying to make it hard, he's trying to make it strong. It gets weak and then it gets hard. When you take metal and you put it into a fire, it first weakens the metal and then it hardens the metal. That means it melts the metal out of all the impurities and then it becomes a harder, stronger kind of metal. So now, Rashi holds that cooking only applies when something is softened by cooking, not hardened by cooking. Certain things, if you heat them up, they get softer. Certain things, if you heat them up, they get stronger. Now, bread and these kinds of things, what happens is they get softer by, if you heat something, it melts, right? Food, potatoes. You try to bite into raw potato, it's very difficult. You cook it to get soft. Rashi holds cooking is only when something gets soft. So you might have thought that if I throw a piece of metal into a fire, I shouldn't be chai because it gets harder. Kumash malon, no. In the process of getting harder, it first gets softer, then it gets harder. And for the moment of getting softer, for that you're chayav. Now the Rambam holds that there's no difference. The Rambam holds that the issa of cooking is whether they make something soft or whether they make something hard. And the Rambam, in fact, has a completely different shot in this Gemara. So Gemara says, Kumash, the milk pour off, it gets softer, the harder comet, and then it gets hard. Omar, Rabba Bar Rav Huna, Haiman Altach Kufra, if a person heats up pitch, Chaim Nishum Mavashal is Chaim because of cooking. Pin up sheet, of course. Answer more mild, the Tema Kivnodavai Kushi. Emeloi, since it gets hard very shortly afterwards, you're not Chaim, Kumash Malon. Pitch is like tar. Tar, if you ever see the people spreading tar, what they do is like this. They heat it up. The second the heat stops, it straight away gets hard again. So it's like wax. While it's hot, it's soft, it's liquidized a bit. And the minute it's not hot, it becomes hard again. So you might have thought, what's the purpose of heating pitch? The whole purpose is only to make it soft. But the second the heat goes away, it's lost. It's not like heating potatoes, but after you take away the fire, you now have cooked potatoes. So what you have, you've gained by the cooking that before there were raw potatoes, now there were cooked potatoes. Before you could not eat them, now you can. But pitch, the second that you stop the heat, it goes back to its previous status of being hard, unmovable, and not usable. So you might have thought that cooking it, therefore, is permitted because you're not actually doing anything which has any lasting. It's like tying a knot, which will become undone in a moment, and therefore it should be okay. Kumash Malon, no. That since at the time of the heating it is of purpose, that is bishul and one is chayav. Omarova, hi man dovet chavita, a person who makes a bowl chaim shum sheva chatois. He has to bring 7 korbanos for making one bowl. Here's got a picture of a bowl. See it? Sorry, I'll just get it here. Here's a bowl. I'm not sure if it's one. There's a bowl. And he says, if you make a bowl, you had 7 chatois. And the Rashi explains what the 7 chatois are. What are the 7? The first thing is you have to cut this. Okay, I'm not sure if it's possible to show the pictures. How can you be chayav 7 chatois for making one barrel? The answer is, so over here we're talking about an earthenware barrel. An earthenware barrel is the next. I was talking about this picture which I showed you, not an earthenware barrel. It's a barrel made out of reeds. There's a difference. We'll see in a moment. So a barrel made out of earthenware. What are the 7 chatois that you're over? The first thing you have to do is you take clods of earth and you grind them down. You do teichen to make them loose. Then you sort out and you take away all pebbles out of the earth in order that you should then be able to heat them up into earthenware. Then you sift the earth. Then you knead the earth into kind of dough with water. Then finally you smoothen it out in order to make a clay thing. Then you light a fire and then you cook it. This at 7. That means I've never made an earthenware keli. If you ever make an earthenware keli, you go through 7 different isurei d'oraisa. So if you make a keli on Shabbos, you're over on 7 d'oraisas. I'll go through them very quickly again. You have to grind the earth to make it fine. Then you have to do boiler to take away the bad. Then you have to sift it, that's meraket. Then you have to do losh. Then you have to do memachik to smoothen it. And finally, havo, you light a fire. And finally, cooking. Tanur, if you make an oven. If you make an oven of, which is, what's the word for it? You have to then perfect it by adding to it a layer around the top. You're also chayav because of makabah patish. Yeah, it shows a little picture, but it's not brilliant. Here, around the rim, you have to add an earthenware rim to it, and therefore you're chayav because of makabah patish. Makabah patish is any time that you do something that perfects and completes something. We'll see more later. First who makes, that's what I was showing you before, a wickerware basket, then he is chayav 11. What are the 11? So the first one is koitza. You have to harvest the reeds, because otherwise you've got nothing. We're talking about now a wickerware basket. How do you make a wickerware basket? You first cut the reeds, that's koitza. Then you have to do, what's the words for it? Then by cutting the reeds, you're also doing zereh, because by cutting one reed, the other reeds grow better. So when you cut over here, right, you cut the reed, so then you're doing koitza. At the same time, it makes the reed which is underneath grow better, so you're doing 2 different isur, koitza and zereh. Then you have to do ma'amah. You have to gather the reeds together.
Count as 2?
What?
Does that count as 2?
Yeah, that's counted as 2. I had it before yesterday. We had it yesterday. If you harvest something where you wanted the wood, plus you wanted to grow better, you have 2. So koitza, zereh, and ma'amah. Then you have to do boiver to choose the good reeds, because the bad reeds you can't use to make a wicker basket. So you take out the reeds, you cut loads of reeds, and then you choose one. Some are good, some are not so good. Then you have to smoothen them out, because reeds are like a growth. It's like a bamboo cane. If you want to make a wicker basket, you have to smoothen them out. That's the 5th. Then you cut them very, very fine, because it's teichen. Because to make a wicker basket, you have to make very thin canes. So what you do is you cut them very, very thin, like we had before, it's teichen. Then you cut them to a specific size, which is mechatech, that's 7. Then what happens is you set up a weaving system. That's meisach. If you remember in our Mishnah we had, when you set up the weaving system, that is meisach. Then finally you do oivek, because you have to weave them in. Then you do oiseshtei botinirin, where you put them into 2 separate rings to make the weave go up and down. So you set up the 2 levels of the weaving, because the way you make a good weave is, as we showed the picture yesterday, is that what happens is you have 2 pedals, which lifts up one set and breaks down the other set. So setting up that system is another malacha. Then finally you've got that you have to, at the end, the wicker basket has pieces jutting out at the top. And what you have to do is, if you look carefully, you cut off, you snip off the tops, and that's makabah patish. Can you see it? If you make a wicker basket, at the very top of the wicker basket, there'll be little pieces protruding. you cut those off, and that's makabel patish. If you then make another layer inside, another 2 chatois, and that is for sewing and for tying, for tufa and kosher. Sewing because you sew another rim around, and then kosher because you have to knot it down. So it's possible to be over in the process of making one wicker basket 11 or 13 different averos if you cheshbon it out carefully. Some do shears wool and dye, it makes it white, cleans it. A person who spins wool while it's still on the animal, chayav sholish chatois. So let's say you're going in a countryside on Shabbos, you see a sheep, and you decide, instead of shearing it, you're going to spin the wool while it's on the sheep's back. You must remember, wool has hundreds of little fibers. It seems, I once read somewhere, that the thinner the fiber is, the more valuable the wool is. And like you get wool from like in New Zealand, where you get like 100 fibers per millimeter or something, very, very thin fibers. But when you take these fibers, you then spin them into a thread, right? A thread is many fibers spun together. So if you do it while it's on the sheep's back, one is chayav 3 different chatois. Achas from goizes, because in the process, it's going to come off, so it's shearing. Achas from a napate, because you're smoothing them out. Achas from teva, one because of spinning. It's not the normal way not to smoothen out, not to shear, and not to spin, and therefore not chayav. Is it not that when they brought as a special gift wool, hairs of a goat of the goats to the Beis Hamikdash as a matana, Rashi mentions that the women would spin it while it was still growing. It's normal spinning. Those women had an extra brilliance that they were able to do it. That means the halacha is that an animal does not become tummy. A live animal never becomes tummy. If you've got a cow, and let's say a person's a zov, and he touches a live cow, what's the status of the cow? Tohi. A live cow does not become tummy. The women who wanted to bring a present to the Mishkan, they did something extra special. What did they do extra special? They would weave and spin the hairs of the goats while it was on the goats. What did they gain by doing that? Because that way, they never made it tummy. If they would shear the goats and then afterwards weave it and bring it to the Mishkan, it could easily be tummy if the woman was a niddah or zava. So therefore, what they used to do is they would weave it while it was on the back of the goat. And therefore, that way they knew it was torn. So we see that is normal. Answers more, you can't compare. There they did it as extra special wisdom. But normally one doesn't do it like that, one is not chayav. There's a very fundamental machlokes. I forgot it yesterday, I looked up again today. A very, very interesting machlokes, which I'm not going to be passing at all about. And that is, if you've got a safe which has got writing on the words, writing on the pages, and by opening it, what happens is you are deleting those letters. There's a very, very big machlekes in the poskim, is permitted or not permitted, and those who permitted from this model. We'll talk about it, and they say like this: that because it's not the normal way of deleting, therefore it is permitted. Now those who forbid it, this big machlekes, which himself doesn't clearly pass because it's should be machlek, and this makes a very, very big nafkemina. For example, cutting into a cake, right? If you've got a birthday cake and it's got letters on it, it is better to cut between the letters than to cut on the letters. You're not allowed to cut on the letters. You can eat the letters, but you can't cut in the letters. It's a very, very important halacha to be aware of, people not so well. These shilas, and this, and the big makor to be made is because it's not a normal way of deleting. How do you normally delete? You normally rub something out. Okay. Says the Gemara, somebody who pulls off a wing. That's a feather, I should say. And then he cuts it off. Can you see? What you do is, when you want a good feather, you pluck it and then you cut off the top. And then afterwards you pull off the strings of the feather. What's the good English word for it? Must be a good English word for murd. Pluck. It's not really, because pluck is when you pluck the feather off the bird. Here, after you pluck the feather, you're pulling the hairs off the feather. All these things, chayav sholosh chatois.
Just right and pull it off.
Pull off the hair. So 3 things. You pluck a feather, cut it to size, and then pull off the hairs, you chayav 3 chatois. One was from the lokish. Why? Teilish chayav. When you pluck it off, you chayav mishum geizes because of shearing. Koyta v'chayav mishum mechatech because you're cutting it to size. Because you're smoothing out the feather. And therefore, if a person takes a feather, prepares himself a quill, if a sofer prepares himself a quill on Shabbos, he's chayav on 3 different malachas. Plucking the feather is geizes, cutting the feather to size is mechatech, and then smoothing it out by pulling off all the hairs is mamachik. It says about Shiur Mishkan Avoy. How did they do Shiur in the Mishkan? What they used to do is, what they used to do is, the Mishkan was actually curtains which went over the woods of the Kroshim. And what happened was, when you've got a curtain, it can flap around. So what did they do? Rashi HaTorah tells us, they took strings, tied them to pegs, and they stuck the pegs into the ground. So they had to tie and untie. Since they tied and untied, so therefore, that was where they had Krisham Mat in the Mishkan. Whenever they tied the strings to the pegs, was it a knot which was meant to last forever? Or was it a knot which was only meant to be temporary? What's the halacha? Of course, it was only meant to be temporary because they only did it for while the Mishkan was standing. And the halacha is that a temporary knot is not awesome in our Torah. How can you say that we learn that halachas are making a knot? From the knots that they made in the Mishkan. The knots they made in the Mishkan to tie the curtains down were always temporary knots. So what happened was they would weave in the Mishkan huge, huge curtains, right? Now, what happens if your thread snaps in half in the middle of weaving? What do? You take the 2 ends of the thread and you make a knot. And then you've got a thread with a knot inside it and you carry on using that same thread. So therefore, that was the knot which, when the Mishnah says they used to make knots in the Mishkan, it's referring to the thread which they used to knot together after it snapped. Robert, to ask the Krisha, you've answered tying. But what about untying? The Gemara now explains something, and it requires a certain amount of concentration. You've got a picture like this. They would have these very, very big threads. Each thread was made out of many, many threads in the Mishkan. If one of these threads would snap, what would they do? They would tie it and carry on weaving with it. Now, if you've got a thread on a jacket, imagine your jacket. Nowadays, I don't think it happens. Let's say you've got your jacket. And one of the threads in the jacket snapped. And the weaver, the tailor, right? Obviously, my jacket was custom made, as you can all imagine. So what happens is when they custom make it, and the person took the thread, and it's got a knot inside it. So when you look on your jacket, you will see a tiny little bump. Where the thread had a knot inside it, there will be a little bump, right? Is that clear? Now, what would happen if 2 threads next to each other both snapped in the same place? You would tie both threads together. Each thread separately, you would tie them to make it a new knot, a new thread. And then you would have a very big bump on your cloth. So what would you have to do? You would have to undo one of the threads, let it be snapped, rather than having a bump in the clothes. Try to explain it as best as I can. And here there's pictures of it, but you must be aware that the pictures are not... Here, you've got 2 knots together, right? So that spoils the shape of the clothes. So the solution...
Have a diagram.
What? So what you do is... So what you do is you undo one of the knots, and then you leave one knot on. Furthermore, that's not what you would do. What would you do is you would cut the thread far away from the other one and tie it up, because that's much better than leaving one of the threads to be undone. Oh, let's go a little diagram. I'll try to explain it again outside to make it clear. When you go a thread, it snaps. You tie it up. You use it. That thread will have a tiny little knot inside it, which will appear on the outer of the clothes. If 2 threads snap next to each other, you've got a big bump. So the Gemara in the Havana says you undo one and leave it to be snapped. It says, well, that's not what you will do. The Gemara explains like this. You would never do such a thing in front of a normal king. If they Melech Malcham Loch B'Kodesh Baruch Hu in front of Hashem, you would do such a thing. Those who strap chilozim, which was a special kind of fish which only came out once in 70 years and produced the blue color which they use in the tchelas for the me'il and for other things. When you trap, you have to make nets. And when you make nets, there's a lot of tying and untying. Here's nice little picture of a net. And what happens is, when you make a net, you have to tie knots. And sometimes you need to make a bigger net. So you take threads from another net and you undo it. So the tying and untying in the Mishkan came from the nets which they use for hunting the chilazim. Says more weiter. Some dude does two tefillos, two sewings, two stitches. It won't last. If you imagine that my fingers are like threads, right? And then I do one thread in and out, once in, once out. Do you think that will last? No, of course not. If you tie a button onto your shirt, you tie it like 3, 4, 5 times in and out. Why? Because if you only do it once, then it'll come loose. So how will it last? We're talking about a situation where you tie, after you make 2 stitches, you then tie it. And therefore, it will last. Tearing in order to sew. So the Gemara says, did they ever tear in the Mishkan? They both say, and Hey Amud Aleph, a cloth which a worm fell inside it and made a hole. They would tear it and sew it. We described this a bit yesterday. I'll describe it again today. It's like this. Here you've got a cloth, and it's got a worm that ate inside a big hole. Can you see the hole in the cloth? Now, if you were just to sew up the hole by itself, what would happen is it would look very, very, very wrinkled, right? Imagine there's a hole in your trousers, right? When the trousers fall down, there's a hole by the knee. So it's got a big hole. So what you do is you just pull the ends of the hole, sew it up. It will look very, very bad because what will happen is it will look very crinkled. So what do? You cut all the way from the edge of the garment past the hole, and then you sew them up together, overlapping each other. And then you can't see the hole. So over here, there was tearing in the Mishkan, all for the sake of then sewing it up together. The person pulls the string of sewing on Shabbos, chayav chatos is chayav chatos. That means you've got 2 clothes, and by putting it together, one string, then what happens is, then you're putting the 2 clothes together. It's not so easy to see on this picture. Basically, what happened was like this. You had a piece of clothing which was made out of 2 cloths, and they were sewed together. And then the string, it got loose. And you pull one string, and by pulling one string, you have tightened all the bonds of the 2 pieces of clothing together. Then you're chayav chatos. Now the Gemara says something a bit off the point. The reason he mentions these halachas, Rashi tells us, is Rav Zutra, when he heard the previous halacha, at the same time he learned these other halachas. And while he learned other halachas, therefore what happened was, he mentions them all together. He teaches them all together because he learned them all at the same time. The person learns something from a megoish, chayav misa, better he should die. We'll explain later. If a person knows how to calculate the calendar and the cheshbon, or when the new moon, the new sun, and the Mazoros is going to come, and he doesn't work it out, also the Sape, many one should not learn from him. And the more explains, Megushta, what is a Megush? Rav Shmuel, Chadamar Charshi, one says it's referring to a magician, the Chadamar Kedufi, and one person says it refers to a person who curses Hashem. And the halacha is that you should not learn from these people, because by learning from them, a person may get drawn after them. Says what is time, the Rav Omar Gedufe. The Rav says it's one who curses Hashem. If it's referring to witchcraft, You're not allowed to learn witchcraft to do it. You're allowed to learn witchcraft only to be able to teach others this time. That means you're not allowed to study witchcraft for the purpose of doing it. But you're allowed to study witchcraft in order to teach others what is forbidden, what is permitted, what punishment applies to each person. So therefore, you're allowed to learn witchcraft. You can't say that somebody who learns from a Megoish is Chaim Misa referring to a witchcraft, because a person is not Chaim Misa for learning witchcraft, only if he decides to do it. Elamai is referring to somebody who learns from somebody who curses Hashem, because there's a chashash that he might get caught up in it. I recently saw a letter from the stipend in the Sefer Kreiner.
What guys, ask you, what about learning Ruach HaTumah? Does that not affect him anyway?
Right. From a Megoish, the world's got two explanations of Megoish is. Either Megoish is somebody who deals in witchcraft or somebody who curses Hashem. So witchcraft one is allowed to learn in order to be able to know the applicable halachas. But to learn from somebody who curses Hashem was not allowed to, because the person may come to be drawn after his attitude. Yes? But Ruach HaTumah, if a person needs to learn it in order to be able to paskin about it, that's permitted. Yes, the person would have to learn to know what to paskin. In the Sefer Kreiner they say, right, it is better for a person to die rather than for one short moment think that perhaps there is some truth to words of apikosos. Again, that means if a person's only not sure, and it's only for a short moment, that means for a short moment it flickers through his mind a thought, maybe there is some truth to all this nonsense, all this apikosos. If a person, it's better for a person to die than to chas v'shalom be over, thinking for a short moment that maybe there's some truth, because maybe there's some truth is already apikosos, because it's a lack of amunah. And even if it's for a short moment, apikosos for a short moment is worse than death. So therefore, it is better for a person to die rather than to have a momentary doubt as to whether there's any in issues of amunah. It's a very, very strong words for the stipler. Okay. And the more says, a person who knows how to calculate all the different cheshbonos of the sun and the moon, and he doesn't, that these people don't bother learning about Hashem. מניין שמצא לאדם לחשב תקופות מעזל, שנאמר ושמעתם ועשיתם ושגרתם כי חוכמתכם ובינתכם לעיני העמים. איזו חוכמה ובינה שעיני העמים? What is wisdom in front of the nations? Havoim as a chishov tekufos u'ma'azolos, it's referring to calculating the different seasons. Rashi explains that Klal Yisrael have the ability, through working out all the new seasons, to predict the weather forecast. That's what Rashi says. Can you imagine such a thing? Look at Rashi. Middle of the Rashi. Klal Yisrael had the ability to predict the weather forecast. How? Because they had such a good knowledge of when the new mazolos and tkufos were happening. And what's so special, says Rashi, about predicting the weather forecast, is that when you predict the weather forecast, and it is found out to be accurate, people get very, very impressed. And this shows the greatness of Klal Yisrael. So when Klal Yisrael predict the weather forecast through the mazolos, that shows the world that Klal Yisrael have true wisdom. And therefore, it's a mitzvah for Klal Yisrael to show the world that they have this wisdom. That's how Rashi explains here. Others explain, now we're discussing over here something much more simpler thing. We're discussing working out the amount of time it takes for the new moon to come, the new sun to come, etc. And this is one of the most fascinating things, because if you look in the Rambam says that it takes 28 and a half days plus Tov Guf Tzadik Gimul Chalokim, a certain amount of Chalokim. And scientists, the Rambam was 1,000 years ago, approximately 1,000 years ago. And he got it from even earlier. And nowadays, the scientists know it because they've got expensive binoculars, telescopes. But 150, 200 years ago, they never knew these dates. So we see the Chochmah of Klal Yisrael that they were told by Mesavus all the different cheshbonos of the sun, the moon, and the stars, and that is the Chochmah that Klal Yisrael have. Getting back to the list of the 39 malachas, Hatzad, Tzvi, v'chul. A person who hunts a deer. Tonu Rabbanan, Hatzad Chilazon. A person who hunts a chilazon v'hapoitzoi. After you hunt it, you squeeze out its blood. From the blood would come a precious color blue, which they used to use for tcheles. So if a person hunts a chilazon and squeeze out its blood, Eino chayav eloachas is only chayav for one avera of hunting. But squeezing out the blood of the chilazon is not an issur d'oraisa. Rabbi Yehuda mechayav shtayim. Rabbi Yehuda says he chayav two. Rabbi Yehuda mepitzir b'chad isha. That means there is a halacha, you're not allowed to take grain out of its husk. That's called dosh. And that same halacha applies that you're not allowed to milk a cow. Why not allowed to milk a cow on Shabbos? Anybody know? Which halacha is it? Dosh. You're taking, just like you're not allowed to take grain out of its husk, you're not allowed to take milk out of an udder. And the woman, for example, is not allowed to express milk on Shabbos unless there's a great need. Is all a problem of dosh. Now, says Rabbi Yehuda, the same thing, when you squeeze the blood out of the chilazon, it's dosh, because you're extracting food out, you're extracting something from its packaging. So therefore, that's the same as dosh. Says the Gemara, there's no dosh unless something is growing. And since there's no dosh unless something is growing, therefore, chilazon, there's no problem of dosh. That is Rava's explanation. When you squeeze the blood, you're killing it. And since you're killing it, you should be chayav because of sheichet, which is killing, which is slaughtering an animal. And we're talking about a situation where the chilazon is already dead. You hunted it on Shabbos, then the chilazon died of its own accord, and then you squeeze out the blood. So squeezing out the blood is not a problem of netzilas neshama of killing it. It's only a problem of dosh. When you're busy squeezing out the blood, you're not trying to kill the chilazon. What are you trying to do? You're trying to extract the dye to be able to make tchelas. So if you're not chayav because it's davar she'eino miskaven. When you're trying to do one thing and something else happens, you're not chayav. So over here as well, you're trying to squeeze out the dye, the color, the blue blood, and therefore you're not chayav for killing it.
It's not inevitable.
Oh, very good. Who asks you a question? Very good. That the Bai and Rava both say that if it's definitely going to happen, for example, if you cut the chicken head off because you want the head of the chicken to play with, then you don't intend to kill the chicken. What's the halacha? Yechayev or potter? Yechayev. Why yechayev? Oh, I don't intend to kill the chicken. The answer is, as you said very nice, a nice word, it's inevitable. Inevitable meaning it's a psikresha, it's definitely going to happen. If something's definitely going to happen, then yechayev. So too over here, when you squeeze out the blood of the chilazon, it's definitely going to die, and therefore should be chayev. And it's more shani ocha the kamadis bein neshama tfei nichele geich the netzot tzivei. The longer the chilazon stays alive, the clearer and better is the color of the blood. Once the chilazon dies, the color of the blood gets dull and not good. So what does the person prefer? He prefers that the chilazon should stay alive. So when he's busy squeezing out the blood, it is true that the chilazon will eventually die. But it's not something which should davar she'eino miskaven. It's even better than davar she'eino miskaven. It is something that you don't want it to happen. You want the opposite to happen. When you want the opposite to happen, even by psikresha, it is okay. So when you dafka want the chilazon to live, so you're not even doing a psikresha, you're not doing davar she'eino miskaven. On the contrary, you want it to survive. So then there's no problem of misaseg, of davar she'eino miskaven. The next one, the Mishnah is shechting. Shechet mishum mayim mechayev. Why is a person chayev for shechting? That means this is a more complicated question. That it is clear that killing an animal is chayev. Why? It's netzilas neshama, taking a life. And in the Mishkab, when they wanted to make skins and different curtains out of skins. They had to kill the rams in order to make skins of rams for the curtains of the Mishkan. So killing an animal, that is obvious that one is chayav on Shabbos. But there are many ways to kill an animal. You can strangle it, you can stone it, and you can shecht it. The Mishnah did not use the word killing an animal. The Mishnah didn't say netilas neshama. The Mishnah used the expression shoichet, which comes to understand that dafka shchita, we're discussing dafka a situation of shechting, of slaughtering. The Gemara wants to know, why is slaughtering worse than anything else? Is there something specific about slaughtering which is worse? What happens if you strangle it? Is strangling and slaughtering the same issa? Many years ago, I saw a vertel from the Baal Shem Tov, and it struck such a chord in my mind that I haven't forgotten it, even though I can't remember where it's from. He says like this, we say the Chad Gadya Seder night. The Shoichet represents, each one of the Chad Gadya represents somebody else. The Baal Shem Tov says the Shoichet represents the Yetzer Hara, because the Yetzer Hara causes harm to people and kills people. The Yetzer Hara destroys people's lives. So therefore, Shoichet, the slaughterer, is a symbol, is a metaphor for the Yetzer Hara. So the Baal Shem Tov, when he read this Gemara, he read it as follows. I'm going to read the Gemara as the Baal Shem Tov read it, and afterwards I'm going to go back to the Pasuk Pshat, because it's not Pasuk Pshat. Go inside. That's Shoichet. Shoichet, the Yetzer Hara, Mishumai Chayav. Why does the Yetzer Hara deserve to be punished? Chazal say that when Mashiach comes, Hashem will kill the Yetzer Hara. Why does he deserve to be punished? HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted that there should be good choices and bad choices. And the Yetzer Hara, all he does is offer us bad choices. So why is the Yetzer Hara? What did he do wrong? Why is he chayav misa? Because of coloring. Meaning, if the Yetzer Hara would offer us to do our averos, that would be okay. The problem is that he shows it to us in such vivid color and in such bright excitement that we get excited about the averos more than the mitzvahs. So because of that, he seduces us to do more averos than we should do. So Rav says, what's the Yetzer Hara doing wrong? What he's doing wrong is tzivea. He's coloring the averos much too nicely to the extent that we get attracted to them. That the Yetzer Hara is supposed to make it difficult for us to serve Hashem. On the contrary, that's what Hashem created. It's part of the stumbling block. It's the challenge. But the problem is that he makes the challenge too difficult, and eventually we stumble and we die in that, and we don't do the right thing. So because of that, the Yetzer Hara deserves to be punished, because netilas neshama, because of the fact that it takes away our lives. Okay, it's a vertel, it's not Pasuk Pshat. The Gemara asks the Kash again. That's Sheikh, to go back to Pasuk Pshat. Sheikh Nishmai Mechayev. Why is Sheikh Chayev? As we explained before, the Gemara's Kasha is, of course, you're chayav for netilas neshama. Of course, you're chayav for taking a life. The question of the Gemara is, are you chayav specifically for shechting? Rava mishum tzivea, because you color. The Gemara will explain. So the Gemara explains, stuff of iron, hail, and base. Is it only because of coloring, not for netilas neshama? Also because of coloring. And the Gemara explains, that which I've just taught you, that sheichet is chayav because of coloring, I'm going to tell you something about it, that future generations shouldn't come, they'll mock me, they'll say to me, what? Shechting is chayav because of coloring? Why does a person want that it should be colored? Answers more, niche is happy, the litvas beis hashchita, that the area around the shchita place, the neck, should get all red. The litvas beis hashchita domo, it should get all moist with blood. People should see it, and they'll come to buy it. When you see a cow, and there's a lot of blood around the neck, what do you think to yourself? It's only been shechted very, very recently. Because if it's been shechted a long time ago, all the red will have gone away. So that encourages you to buy it. It's fresh meat. So when the person slaughters a cow, he has two intentions. Intention number one is to kill it. Intention number two is that the neck should get all red, and then more people come to buy the meat. Because of that, Rav holds that whenever a person shechts on Shabbos, is chayav two different chatois, coloring and the netilas neshama. If you take a stone, throw it at a cow and kill it like that, then you're chayav because of netilas, or you strangle it, that's netilas neshama. but you're not chad because of tziveh. But if you shecht it in the process of the bloodletting, you're chayav two. One for tziveh and one for shchita. And that's what the Gemara over here is teaching us.
If you own private use, then and you're not interested in selling it on or getting customers.
That's a good point. It's a good point. Let's say a person shechting for himself. He intends to eat the cow himself. He should not be chad because of tziveh. That's a good point. Now, ma'abdo is salting, and ma'abdo is what's ma'abdo? A good word for ma'abdo is he works it. He what's the words for it? Tanning it. It's the same halacha. You take it when the way you want. The idle siltut and put in siltut. Siltut is to make lines in the leather that afterwards people can use it better. Here you can see he's drawing lines in the leather. That is siltut. That's a new malacha. So indeed, meleach and ma'abed is the same, but siltut is a new one. Omar v'ababarav huna. Hi man the molech bisra. A person who salts meat on Shabbos. Chamishu ma'abed is chayav because of ma'abed tanning. There's no tanning in food. Look at the top tasteless. Well, it's not allowed to salt food on Shabbos. One has to be very careful. That obviously it depends which food, etc. But if you pour a very lot of food, salt, on a piece of vegetable, then what happens is the vegetable becomes salted, and therefore it's forbidden. And that is why you have to prepare if Pesach falls on a Shabbos, then you have to make your salt water before, even actually on Yom Tov better. For Yom Tov, the Mishvah is more makel. You should always prepare your salt water before Yom Tov and Shabbos come in, because you're not allowed to salt something, it could be a habit. Only if you salt it for a journey. If a person salts meat to have a slice of meat for supper for Yom Friday night meal, there's no problem on Ma'abed because you don't salt it that much that it becomes royal to be. That's not called tanning. Tanning is when you salt it enough that it's for a journey. But when you're going to eat it straight away, that's not called salting and that's permitted. If you smoothen out or cut the leather, if a person is smoothen out between the pillars, it's chayv mishum machik. And this is very, very strange because Rashi says a very interesting pshat. Rashi says, look at this, it's got a picture even. You're not here today, so. That what happened was they used to have these big pillars, supporting pillars, and people would walk around the pillars to make the ground around the pillar very, very hard. And in that way, the pillars would be stronger. And in that way, you're chayv mishum machik. Tosfos says that's not mamachik. Which malacha would that be? Boina, you're building, you're helping the building be stronger. Tosfos says, on contrary, what you do is they used to have these skins which were used to be on the pillar. The people would hang skins on the pillars. Look at the second Tosfos. You put leather on the pillar and you rub it in order to smoothen it. And he doesn't agree with Rashi. He doesn't agree with Rashi. Okay. So Tosfos says what you used to do is that they used to put skins onto a pillar and people would go past it and rub it to smoothen it out. Three things Rashi told me in the name of Avishab ben Levi. All these three things, they look very similar in act, but the reality is they are all completely different malachas. A person who smoothens out the top of a wooden frame on Shabbos. Chayv mishum mechatech is chayv because of mechatech. Because what's the purpose? You want to make it into the right size. Let's say you've got a what's the word for it? A fence between you and your neighbor. And the fence is made out of wooden poles. And you smoothen out the top of the wooden poles. You're chayv because of mechatech, you're cutting it down to size. And a mareach v'tir b'Shabbos, a person who smoothens out a wound, he puts out cream on a wound on Shabbos, chayv mishum mamachik. That is mamachik, that's considered smoothing out. Because what happens is, by doing that, you are smoothing out the cream. Rufag talks about this in Zocher v'Shomoy, that you're not allowed to rub cream onto a child. Sometimes a baby has a very severe nappy rash. So what you have to do is you have to take it with a spoon, put it on, without rubbing it in, just dabbing it on, and that's the back of a spoon, that is okay. But to rub is a problem of a machik. If you beautify a stone, you smoothen out a stone, you're because of makabah patish, because you're making the stone perfect. We'll talk about, look at Tosis again. Third Tosis, you're not chayav because of mechatech on the stone. Why? It's already a good stone. It's already a good brick. And if you look in the crystal stones, you will notice that around each stone, there's like a frame, like they cut out a bit of the stone. It's very interesting to see how much work they must have done. The stones are very nicely hewed out. That means it's not cut into sides. Because
they're not a worm that they used.
Yeah, okay, I'm not saying how they did it, but it depends which stones you're looking at, because whether these stones we're looking at are from the building by Sheni, I don't know if they used the worm for by Sheni. You're right, they could have used it, but I'm just pointing out that there's a concept of after you've got a stone, which is in the right size and the right shape, you then design it, you then make it more beautiful. And that is over here called makabah patish, because it's the final preparation to make it into a perfect stone. If you draw a picture on a keli, and if you blow a glass cup, make it into a cup, that is chayav mishum makabah patish, because you're perfecting it. Makabah patish is whenever you complete something, and now it's completely usable, that is makabah patish. Sometimes if you've got a jumper, it gets bubbles on it. It gets, I'm not sure if there's a good English word, bubbles. It gets pieces of cloth coming out. If you pull those off, you're doing makabah patish, because you're perfecting the garment. Obviously, if you've got a jumper with hundreds of them, and you pull one off, you're not on makabah patish, because it's still in just as bad state as it was before. But let's say you've got a very nice jacket. It's only got one bubble on it, one splinter, one ball of cloth on it, and you pull it off, that's makabah patish, because now it's perfect. The hanimili, the copy that allow you only if it bothers you. If it doesn't bother you, then you haven't done anything. So therefore, you're not makabah patish. Somebody writes 2 letters. Person writes 1 big letter. And you could have written 2 in that size potter, because you only written 1 letter. You rub out a big letter. And in that place, you could write 2 chayav, then you're chayav. When you delete something which gives you the space to write 2 letters, that's called moicha, because you're rubbing out enough to be able to write 2 letters. When you write 1 big letter, it's only 1. Because you're not chayav unless you do 2. You committed to anything which has got completion, anything which you can complete it is considered makabah patish. And that's a very big malacha to be choshesh for. Many times you do something, and by doing your last thing, you're doing makabah patish, you're completing the job. Eilu always malachis, says the Gemara, Eilu lafuke, what these Eilu come to exclude? Lafuke v'dabelezet mechavel todu v'mokim av. For example, if a person plants, that's zureh. If a person prunes, that's also zureh, because you're making things grow. We pass like the Chachamim, that if a person plants and he prunes on the same Shabbos with the same forgetfulness, he's only chayav 1. Because at the end of the day, one's Av, one's a Tolda. The Tolda is of the Av. Our Mishnah teaches that. Eilu, these are the 39 malachas, you can't be over more. Rabbi Lezer says it's possible to be over 2. 1 for the Tolda, 1 for the Av. Rabbi Lezer says if a person does an Av and a Tolda, he's chayav 2 chatois. Chos achas, there's only 40 minus 1. The Mishnah tells it twice. At the beginning of the Mishnah it says it's 40 minus 1. And at the end of the Mishnah it says 40 minus 1. Now, Fuki with Yehuda. The Tana Yehuda Moisiv is Hashevet V'Medaktek. Rabbi Yehuda adds 2 more malachas on Shabbos. One's called Shevet and one's called Medaktik. Shevet is like this. Let's see, not a good picture of it. Shevet is that when you put the threads across the warp, it's very possible that one thread will overlap another. Right? If you ever try to put one string after the next with your tzitzis, so one of them overlaps. So shevet is they would take like a comb and move it along the threads to make it that all the threads should be uniform, non-overlapping. Medaktik was a very interesting malacha, is that they would bang on the threads to loosen them a bit. Because if the threads were too tight, then you couldn't sew with them. So you'd bang on the threads a little bit to loosen them, to give it extra pull. So Rabbi Yehuda held there were actually 41 malachas on Shabbos, the 39 of our Mishnah, plus these 2. Combing the threads that they shouldn't be overlapping, and banging the threads that they shouldn't, they should give a bit more give. On Muloi, they said to me, you're wrong. Shevet ha'bechad mesach. Shevet is included in mesach, which we said is setting up the weaving process. Medaktik ha'bechad oivek, that's part of the weaving. Because by banging it, you'd give a little bit of pulse in order to be able to weave. So it's included as part of the malacha of weaving, and it's not a separate malacha altogether. It will stop here. Mitzvah Shem, tomorrow we're going to finish the perk. If everybody can arrange to bring in a chaim, it's very exciting to finish a perk al Godel. We might even continue more than that. Very good. Any questions? Any questions?
Just a thought that if someone has a brand new, obviously you need to do to tovel it. Is that called maskapatish? Is that why you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos?
You just said the Gemara in Beitza. Very, very good. The Gemara in Beitza says that midrabanon we do not tovel a keli, because midrabanon we're choshesh like it's a form of maskapatish that you're completing it. Very, very good. That is that.
Same thing with taking Trumas L'Maasros.
Yes, same Trumas L'Maasros. Exactly. It's a interesting malacha. It's like when is it makrapatish? It's not makrapatish. What happens if you finish building the last brick on a house? Is that makrapatish or boina? It has to be when you're doing something extra to complete it. You've got everything and you're doing something to perfect it. That's makrapatish.
What's the nafkamina?
It's only an nafkamina for how many chatois you have to bring. Nowadays, yes. Not nafkamina. But there's other nafkaminas. For example, opening a packet of crisps is that makrapatish, or a carton, or a bottle, and things like that. It's one of the places where they discuss it.
Why would that be makrapatish?
Because let's say, for example, an orange juice carton. I saw one shuva, I just saw it 2 days ago, where orange juice carton, that you cannot use it. I'm talking about the little ones. You cannot use it as it is. When you pierce it with a straw, now it can be used. So by you piercing it with the straw, you've actually made it the ability to actually use it. They actually will pass because it's not makrapatish. I must admit, we don't agree with it. I'm just saying that would be the theory, that by piercing it with the straw...
You're making a keli.
Oh, that's a different problem. That's a separate issue. That's a separate issue. It could be an issue. I'm not saying you're allowed to open orange cartons. I'm just saying, I'm not saying you're not allowed to, I'm not saying you're allowed to. I'm just saying that there's a shayla if it's makrapatish as to whether when you're completing it, because now it's something which can be used as a carton. Before then, you can use it as a carton. It's completely useless. Yeah, it's a good point. This toveling. Very good. Okay, shkoich everybody, shkoich. I didn't know how. Oh, here it is. Very good. Okay, so have a very, very good night. Yeah, thanks.